Hello, dear friends. A human being without an informed and orderly system of thought will always be at the mercy of others. Opinion piece. Summer of discontent. Strikes over high prices. Citizens' frustration. Demands for pay rises. Blackouts begin in Europe. Electricity bill boycotts. The world economy is imploding. Nothing can survive with low frequency. The global financial system is collapsing. Can the world cope without Russian oil and gas? Central banks are raising interest rates. ECB admits inflation is higher than expected. World economy will bottom out and switch to an honourable system. Let's start. The wave of strikes by employees who find it impossible to make ends meet in the face of rising prices has been dubbed the summer of discontent by the British press. The term alludes to the protests in the late 70s in the midst of a severe economic crisis, which were then called the winter of discontent. Discontent means displeasure, dislike or dissatisfaction with something or someone. It is synonymous with anger, displeasure, regret, annoyance and dissatisfaction. Blackouts begin in Europe. There is not enough gas to generate electricity. Rolling blackouts have begun in Kosovo because the country cannot find enough supplies of natural gas to keep power plants running at full capacity. Other European countries, from the UK to Bulgaria, are also developing plans to cut electricity. Politicians in Europe have personally caused this energy problem and price rise by imposing sanctions. Charity. Can the world manage without Russian oil and gas? Russia supplied the European Union with 40% of its natural gas last year. Germany, Europe's largest economy, was the biggest importer in 2020, followed by Italy. In 2021, the UK imported 4% of its needs from Russia, and in June this year, it did not import Russian gas for the third consecutive month. The US does not import gas from Russia. However, it is affected when Russia restricts supplies to continental Europe, as this drives up the world gas price. Russian energy supplier Gazprom says it will shut down the Nord Stream 1 pipeline to Germany for maintenance from 31st August to 2nd September, further affecting supplies. It is also flaring a large amount of gas from a plant near the start of the pipeline. The European Union says it will cut gas imports from Russia by 2/3 within a year, but has stopped short of a total ban. To help achieve this target, member states agreed to cut gas use by 15% over the next 7 months. However, there are doubts about where it will find alternative supplies, and it may have to import liquefied natural gas in LNG tankers from producers such as the US and Qatar, but this increases the price by a factor of 5. UK crisis. The UK has been mired in a high cost of living crisis for weeks that has sparked frustration among its citizens, leading to a growing number of strikes and the emergence of initiatives calling for boycotts of electricity and gas bills. Inflation, the rate at which prices are rising, reached 10.1% in July, 5 times the Bank of England's price stability target, and the agency's forecast is for it to exceed 13% in the coming months. However, other analysts put this protection at a much higher percentage, exceeding 18%, which has sparked consent and indignation among the population, who fear that the new winter arrives, they will have to choose between heating their homes and eating. The rise in energy prices bodes for a difficult winter in the UK. The price of gas and electricity for households will be 3 times higher this winter than last. From October, all British households will start to receive a discount on their bills up to £400, less than $500, a measure approved weeks ago by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. For the time being, and until the government takes effective action, the Don't Pay organisation, which was launched in June, has called for a boycott of electricity bills from 1st October, the scheduled date of the energy price increase. More than 110,000 people have joined the initiative through its website and have pledged to cancel their payment by direct debit. The campaign calls for a boycott from 1st October if the government and energy companies refuse to act first. Frustration at not making ends meet has led thousands of workers in various sectors to strike or consider strike action. The main unions are calling for wage increases. The powerful British rail sector has long been on the warpath against the government and the rail companies. They have now been joined by dockers at the port of Felixstowe, where almost half of the UK's container traffic is channeled. The discontent also extends to other sectors such as the judiciary, the British Postal Service, Royal Mail, telecommunications, teachers and nurses. Similarly, the rubbish collection service in Scotland has stopped work, leaving the streets laden with bins overflowing with bags of rubbish. The strike by the collection service, which runs until 30th August, has left the streets of Edinburgh laden with rubbish. Systemic crisis. The end of private central banking. The global financial system collapses, currencies fall and markets uncouple. The whole system will collapse in due course, according to Peter B. Mayer. This is the secret that is revealed to the public. The world economy is imploding and can no longer be sustained. The new system designed to allow the new world economy to flow smoothly into the quantum financial system is introduced. The revaluation of currencies is set to begin at the appropriate time. In a last-ditch effort, the central banks are raising interest rates, which could cause a collapse of the system, taking the blame themselves as intended. The housing market will collapse. The car industry will have a hard time. People will no longer be able to get a loan easily, and everything will start to collapse. Disclosure is light and progress. The story of what will happen in 2022 and beyond will be the most important news story in the history of humankind. Centuries of misinformation will come to an end. Disclosure means light and change for the healing of humankind and our planet. The bulk of profound changes will be revealed in an avalanche of startling news coming from multiple sources simultaneously, and that will be the beginning of a new era in the history of humankind. People will witness great changes on our planet since the sinking of Atlantis some 12,000 years ago. With less fear than ever before in the history of humankind, the truth will be spoken with more energy and clarity by people, within and without in the offices of government, and their words will be heard, preserved and multiplied. Many things will be revealed that will show the world in a different light. Many historical facts will be analyzed to find the real truth. Bottoming out. Matthew's message: national economies in a state of bankruptcy and will not be successfully revived. The world economy with hit rock bottom and an honourable system will begin to function throughout the world. Wars, violence, deception, oppression, and censorship will gradually cease as dark hearts and minds leave the planet. It cannot be otherwise, simply put. This is the physics that governs life in this universe. As the Earth moves rapidly into higher planes, nothing will survive with low frequency in any form. Theft, dishonesty, unjust laws, intolerance, cruel customs and deeds. It will not be as if religions are totally discarded and replaced by universal laws in the Golden Age. When the truths emerge that science and spirit are the same, and that religious dogmas were created by early church and the state leaders to control the masses, humans whose consciousness has risen beyond the limitations of third density will adhere to the spiritual aspect of their respective religion, and the manufactured aspects of social control will fall by the wayside. Solar storm. The M4 class solar flare hurled a solar storm into space. Analysts have determined that it will likely hit the Earth's magnetic field during the final hours of 28 August in a glancing blow that could trigger G1 class geomagnetic storms. Storm conditions could extend into 29 August, especially if a high-speed solar wind stream arrives as expected. Gaseous material flows from the southern hole in the Sun's atmosphere. Large sunspot grows more than tenfold in recent days and is pointing towards Earth. The large sunspot AR 3085, which barely existed 2 days ago, has grown tenfold in size, becoming a group of spots, each of which has a core with a diameter similar to that of the Earth. The active region faces the Earth and crackles with C-class solar flares. Americas. The president of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights criticizes the politicization of the courts. Mexican authorities seek to reduce the time for the rescue of 10 missing minors. Well, they'd better hurry because it's already been more than 3 weeks. New options evaluated for the rescue of minors in Mexico. Government failure. Mexico entry visa does not stop the flow of migrants to the US. 3 caravans of migrants advanced through southern Mexico on their way to the US. Nearly 80,000 migrants have entered Honduras in 2022, most of them Cubans. 8 groups are overwhelmed by the arrival of migrants in New York. Chancellor highlights the return of more than 29,000 Venezuelans to the country through a government plan. Cuba ratifies its development strategy before the Eurasian Economic Union. Cuba contacts the US to rehabilitate the Matanzas fire zone. Fuel prices to remain frozen in Nicaragua. Argentina and India agree to strengthen political and economic relations. Argentina restricts foreign travel by civil servants to moderate spending. Argentina's Neuquén province negotiates with the Mapuche to pacify Vaca Muerta. The Chilean Minister of Social Development resigns. 6 forestry machines are burnt in La Araucanía after the imprisonment of a Mapuche leader. Earthquake of 3.6 degrees magnitude alarmed in Lima, but no personal injuries. Castillo calls for maximum punishment for the policeman who raided the presidential headquarters. Petro will travel to Peru for the summit of the Andean Community of Nations on his first official trip abroad. Colombia suspends attacks on guerrilla camps while minors are recruited. Dialogue to resolve the coca growers' conflict fails again in Bolivia. El Salvador's government recognizes 73 deaths in its state of emergency. Foreign investment in Brazil reaches its highest value in almost 2 years. Bolsonaro says the European Union wants to speed up the agreement with Mercosur because of the draft. USA. Powell wants more rate hikes. Wall Street turns red. Texas, Idaho, and Tennessee pass restrictions that come close to banning abortion. California bans the sale of new gasoline cars from 2035. The military prosecutor at Guantanamo creates a division to combat pedophile rings. According to the 32-page document, 14 of the 15 boxes seized from Trump last February contained material with confidential or classified information which led to the investigation. Europe. The Pope creates 20 new cardinals, 1 Spanish and 4 Latin American. Spanish demonstrators demand aid for the fires in Zamora. Fire extinguished in a biodiesel tank in the port of Bilbao. Consternation in Granada at the death at the age of 76 of the cartoonist Martín Morales, whom I knew personally. Flamenco guitarist Manolo Sanlúcar dies at the age of 78. Sabadell leads the IBEX 35 upwards. The ECB admits that inflation is higher and more persistent than it had expected. German exporters' confidence falls for the third consecutive month. France and Algeria seal reconciliation 60 years after independence. The Netherlands removes 400 migrants from a makeshift camp. Germany suspects Russia of spying on 2 of its military training bases. ECOT declares the Czech subsidiary of the Russian bank Sberbank bankrupt. Poles and Czechs agree to defend Slovakia airspace. Protesters urge people not to pay high energy costs in the UK. Edinburgh is covered in a meter of rubbish as litter pickers demand a better pay. Serbia and Kosovo reach agreement on identity documents. Hungary will expand its only nuclear power plant with Russian help. Ukraine. The volume of grain exported from Ukraine exceeds 1 million tons. The Ukrainian parliament votes itself a massive wage increase. Russian security forces have revealed that the Ukrainian security service has been massively recruiting Ukrainian citizens who frequently travel to Russia since 2014, forcing them to hand over data on Russian military personnel in Crimea and other regions. Ukrainian army attacks a hospital in the Republic of Lugansk with HIMARS. 3 dead. Russian troops destroy the M777 howitzer used to shell the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Ukrainian armed forces opened fire on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Pictures show the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant exposed to continuous attacks by Ukrainian forces. Ukrainian shells hit the radioactive isotope storage area at the plant. International consent over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The last 2 reactors at the plant are shut down. Fighting forces a disconnection of the plant from the power grid. The European Union would be affected by the shutdown of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The United Nations is negotiating with Russia to inspect the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. A report confirms the use of cluster bombs in the Ukrainian war. The United Nations receives credible allegations of Ukrainian use of cluster munitions. Ukraine faces its most difficult winter in history, but should react for the goal of storing 19 billion cubic meters of natural gas reserves on time. Only 54 of the 193 United Nations member states signed the declaration condemning Russia's military actions in Ukraine, less than a third, or 28%. The resolution was voted on after 2 days of debate. Ukraine doesn't have an accurate record of US weapons received. Kiev keeps paper records of arms shipments and cannot always know where they are going, Pentagon says. A senior military official admits he is not very confident about the Ukrainian authorities' control over incoming weapons. Ukrainian Foreign Legion fighters accuse their command of many offenses, from looting to suicide missions. Soldiers from one unit were forced to steal furniture and electronics from a shopping center in the city of Lysychansk in front of local residents, according to Ukrainian media investigation. China suffers the most intense heat wave in 6 decades. China warns of serious threat to autumn harvest from drought and heat. China's largest freshwater lake shrinks by 75% due to drought. China announces more measures to support its infrastructure and agricultural sector. China demands US to stop official contacts with Taiwan. Beijing expressed its protest against the visit of Senator Marsha Blackburn. People should understand that the situation in Taiwan and in China affects the whole world. Taiwan is increasing its military spending to record levels. It plans to increase its defense budget by 14% to counter a possible threat from Beijing. Experts explain Washington's tactics to contain China. Analysts say that the UK's decision to ban Huawei equipment in 2020 was merely a pretext to convey direct orders from Washington. TikTok, the biggest spy app made in China. CCP manipulates cyberspace to stifle criticism on Xinjiang, says US. An investigation into election software uncovers Chinese coders. A Michigan election firm reveals an alarming Chinese connection. Toyota and world's top battery maker halt factories in China amid drought-induced energy crisis. The clashers join a growing number of industries ranging from solar panels to aluminium smelting. China's energy shortages could boost demand for copper and aluminium. PetroChina's record profit after oil rises. Chinese scientists create a device that improves the performance and safety on stealth bombers. Asia. Monsoon rains flood Pakistan, killing up to 1,000 people. Pakistan evacuates thousands in the face of heavy monsoon rains. Pakistan appeals for international aid and declares a state of emergency over the floods. European Union earmarks $1.8 million for Pakistan flood victims. South Korea develops stealth drones to neutralize Pyongyang's air defense systems. A man places the skin of his thumb on a friend's thumb in India to circumvent biometric checks and get him to take an exam instead. The plan failed and both were arrested. Meta's attempt to avoid probe into privacy policies in India quashed. A Delhi court has dismissed application by WhatsApp and Facebook to prevent the Competition Commission from investigating the WhatsApp platform following allegations of anti-competitive sharing practices by Meta to allegedly exploit data. Kuwait increases its oil production to more than 2.8 million barrels per day. Kuwait, I mean. Saudi Arabia unhappy with Iran nuclear deal. Iran conducts large-scale maneuvers with its combat drones. A luxurious 1,200-year-old mansion with amazing underground structures discovered in the Israeli desert. The complex system of vaults, built more than 5 meters below the courtyard, allowed residents to shelter from the scorching summer heat. Africa. Angola could be connected to the Russian Mir payment system. Clashes in Libyan capital leave 23 dead. Ethiopian Air Force bombs the capital of Tigray. The United Nations calls for an immediate end of violence in Ethiopia after a trust breaks down. The United Nations warns of a food crisis for Sahrawi refugees in Algeria. An NGO in Mauritania calls for the creation of a fund for victims of slavery to be speeded up. Tunisia recalls its ambassador to Rabat for consultations after crisis over Sahrawi leader. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.